The biggest thing that I say when it comes to identifying hurdlers and trying to figure out who could be a potentially good hurdler for your team is don't count anyone out. I'll kind of go into more detail on my story. Um, I was a football player in most of my life through high school. I really thought going to Penn State was going to be my route. I grew up in New Jersey. But, I was a tailback and free safety, and I got injured in a game during my sophomore year of high school. And the football coach said, go run track to get back into shape for football. And my immediate reaction was, I really don't want to. I was pushed into it and did not want to do it. Didn't understand why these kids were running outside in the freezing cold weather with t-shirts on. But I ended up doing it anyway. And my first events were the 1 and the 2. I was always very fast. So I figured, hey, you know what? I'll go ahead and try the 1 and the 2 and see how that goes for me. And it went, okay, it went all right. I ended up not really standing out too much. I was kind of finishing in the middle of the pack. I thought, hey, I got all this speed. Maybe I'll try the jumps. So did that, and same thing happened. Long jump didn't do too well. High jump, it was decent. I jumped like 5'8", I think. But we had another high jumper on our team who was jumping like 6'5". So I really wasn't standing out there. And I thought, I should be standing out. Then randomly, I was thrown into the hurdles, and I broke our school record in my first hurdle race. That first year running the hurdles, my sophomore year of high school, I went to state, placed 6th, and made the final at nationals. And then kind of dabbled into, just so you know, I ran in New Jersey, and in New Jersey, we had the 400 hurdles, unlike other states where you run the 300 hurdles. So I was running the 400 hurdles there in New Jersey, and went on to win our state and our meet of champions meet every single during my junior and my senior years in both the 110 and the 400 hurdles. So you never know who can be a standout, because after I had success in the hurdles, we had a ton of other kids in our team join in on the hurdles. And we're talking about kids who had pool noodle arms and legs the size of, just tiny little legs. And they were scoring points at our conference meet. Even at state, we had a couple kids score hurdle points for us at state. So never count anyone out when it comes to the hurdles. Now I'll get into the 3 traits of a potential hurdle star. First is that speed and endurance, right? So that being said, the fastest kids make the fastest hurdles. Speed kills. So if you have a kid who is doing well in the 1, the 2, the 4, the 8, have them try out hurdling. But they need to have a strong work ethic to be good hurdlers. That's that second bullet point, and that is totally key. I kind of believe in don't put a kid in the hurdles unless they want to be there. You see a lot of kids at meets who just end up flopping over the hurdles, and they fall and they crash and they end up on Runner Space's Instagram as memes. So you don't want your kids to do that. I believe in making sure that if they're going to hurdle, they need to want to do it. It's the hardest event, period. Sorry, 800-meter enthusiasts and triple jumpers. The 400 or the 300, 400 hurdles, they are the hardest events. Even the 110, I believe, is among the hardest, the 110, 100 hurdles. So they want to be there. That last point, I recommend kids who are flexible and durable. Flexibility is a huge asset to have for hurdlers, and I would exercise caution with kids who are injury prone. You may be wondering why I don't have height on this list. I think height would be fourth, but I'm only 5'9", and when I was successfully hurdling in high school, I was shorter. Rashawn Jackson is 5'8", and he's an Olympic medalist and also a world champion in the 400 hurdles. Mikhail Thomas from Trinidad and Tobago I think he's 5'7". He's very short, 110 hurdler, very successful professional athlete, Pan American Games medalist. So you don't need to be tall to be successful in the hurdles. I think that's kind of, I don't think that's really true. It obviously does help to be tall, but I don't think it is a necessity. Moving on. Moving on to approaching the hurdles. And this is a topic that I think is extremely important. This is something that really helped me a lot as a hurdler, getting into this mindset for approaching the hurdles. And as I coached kids in the hurdles, this is something that I really saw benefit them a lot. Go ahead and bring these points up so you can see them all. Um, Approaching the hurdles is more mental than physical for so many kids. Um, this is why I advise caution with entering kids in the hurdles who aren't interested. You have to aggressively attack each hurdle, and you have to have that idea in your mind because the hurdles are scary and they're even scarier when you're tired. But you have to have that mindset of, I'm not afraid, I'm going to attack. Um, so when you're coaching your hurdlers, you want them to focus on that aggressive attack. That means jumping to and through the hurdle. We see so many kids out there who look kind of lazy over the hurdles, whether it's the 110, 100 hurdles or the 300 hurdles, but they have to have that in their mind that I'm going to really be aggressive as I'm approaching the hurdle with those two steps to the hurdle, as I'm clearing the hurdle, and as I hit the ground and run away from the hurdle. All those, that needs to be a quick, aggressive, sharp movement. Um, and of course, that's not something that a new hurdler or even an experienced hurdler is going to be able to do with accuracy every time very well. So that's why that third bullet point is, it is okay to mess up. So I think you want your athletes to know that, hey, if they hit a hurdle or if they are unbalanced over a hurdle or just mess up, it's totally fine. But they have to know that, okay, I'm just going to attack to and through the next hurdle. I can recover. So that's a really, really big key point. I've seen so many athletes have, one hurdle or two hurdles they hit unsuccessfully, and that just totally throws them off. And they have to get used to at practice when they mess up, just keep on going, fighting strong, aggressively to and through the next hurdle. And I think if you do that at practice, when you mess up in meets, you'll be able to recover and be that much better for it. So that's a major cue. Aggressively attack to and through the hurdle, and it's okay to mess up. Visually, with that being said, this applies more so to the 300 hurdlers, but also the short hurdlers as well. Another important cue is to simply, it's a simple one that you may not feel it's important, but it really is to keep the eyes focused on that upcoming hurdle. I was someone who was guilty of, when I was running the hurdle races, you just kind of look generally out into the open in front of you. Or you might be looking at, the athlete to your side, or just kind of looking at the ground. A lot of athletes don't focus, keyword focus, on that upcoming hurdle. And why is that so important? Number one, it helps your athletes to develop the ability to sight the hurdle. And Kevin Young, who has the world record in 400 hurdles, he was an expert at sighting the hurdle. That entails being able to tell kind of where your position is in relation to the upcoming hurdle. So when you come off hurdle one or hurdle two, and you're approaching hurdle three, if you're looking at hurdle three from hurdle two, you're able to say, okay, I feel like based on my repetitions, my experience through practice, that I'm in a good position to hit that next hurdle with proper form without having to bound or stutter step. Or maybe I'm a little off and I need to make a slight adjustment while I'm further away. And you want your athletes making those slight adjustments when they're further away from the hurdle, as opposed to getting close to it and having to stutter step or bound. So another big cue is keep your athletes looking and focused on the upcoming hurdle so they can analyze their position in relation to it. That's super, super key, and something that a lot of athletes just don't think about and don't focus on. Um, Next, we're going to get into hurdle steps. I'm just going to bring all these points up. in relation to 300 and 100/110 hurdlers. That's me on the side there, looking fresh, 2008 Olympic trials. um, but here are the hurdle steps. I think this information is in the hurdles training guide, but I really want to focus on having your athletes think more about the leg that is coming up in each hurdle as opposed to the steps. So more so for the 300 hurdlers. So if I can talk about my personal experience in high school, I was running 14 steps between hurdle 2 and 8, and then 9 to 10, I would go 15 steps. And I really would know if I was on that just based on which leg was coming up. So when you really want your athletes to identify, which leg is supposed to come up, and that comes obviously through practice and repetition. Um, that's a really big thing. I think as kids who are as hurdlers in the 300 hurdles come to identify that makes them so much more stronger in the event because they're prepared, and that really helps their confidence. When you know, okay, my left leg is going to be lead leg for the next hurdle, or my right leg should be lead leg for the next 3 hurdles. Just kind of having that in your mind and knowing that just helps you tremendously, because you don't want your athletes thinking about hurdling. You want them just executing the race. So the more they can get that done at practice, the better, and that comes through repetition. Um, and in the guide, we talk about things like you definitely want to make sure that when you're hurdling at practice, that your athletes are well warmed up. Your athletes are attacking to and through the hurdle each time, so that they're always hitting their step pattern when they're at practice. That is absolutely key to gain that consistency. Um, just like it says up here, you really, when it comes to the 100, 110 hurdles, you want your athletes, they're going to hit 8 steps the first hurdle, pretty much all of them. And that means their back foot is going to be their lead leg. They should all be doing 3 steps between each hurdle. That's really very rarely you're going to see someone do 4, and that's really going to be an issue. But when it comes to those short and longer hurdlers, when it comes to doing drills, you want them doing drills on both sides so you don't develop any muscle imbalances. And really, for those 300-meter hurdlers, you really, really want them to focus very hard on having good form when they're doing hurdle drills on both sides. When the lead leg is left and right and the trail leg is left or right, you really want them to be making sure they execute to the best of their ability and having the goal of having their hurdle form look identical, whether it's right or left. The key for me, when I felt like I was very strong at having the ability to hurdle with my left and right lead legs and alternate, was when I started to forget which side was more strong. So once I got to that point, I was like, oh, I don't even know if left or right is more comfortable for me as a lead leg. They both kind of feel the same now. And that's kind of where you hopefully want your athletes to get to. That takes a lot of time and a lot of time and effort and dedication, but it's something that you want your athletes progressively working towards. And kind of that is kind of some stuff that is brought up on this page here. Um, your 300 hurdlers will likely need to alternate legs, and you want them to be very strong at that. Aim to have that regular form for their alternate and their regular legs going over the hurdles. I'm going to go over to next page. Now we're going to talk about hurdle form. Now, what are some things you want to look for when it comes to identifying proper hurdle form, and some cues that you want to deliver to your athletes? When it comes to the head, keeping straight with the chin level to the ground. Kind of the same as you would when you're running. Upper body, lean forward at the hips without bending the back. That's a really key one there. Keep straight. And I think with the arms, bring the trail arm straight back like you're running without making it go wide. Point the lead toward that lead arm toward the toes or bring the forearm across the body. That is, you can kind of think about two ways when it comes to your lead arm. But you want your head, your upper body, and that lead arm, the elbow pointing forward. And that's really important because you want to have that, like the title says, controlled forward aggression. So your head, your upper body, and getting into your hips, pointing forward. You want the hips to push forward over the hurdle. So you don't want the hips sitting back. Aggressively running to and through the hurdles requires you to push those hips forward and keep them straight. That lead leg, you want a high knee action, similar to what a general kind of high knee would look like, but you don't want your athlete fully extending the leg. That can cause them to lose control. That trail leg, keep it tucked in and close to the rear end. In the feet, for both legs, you want to have that dorsal flexion. That's really, really key. Dorsal flexion means that your toes are going to be pointed upwards as opposed to letting them drag downward. When your toe is kind of hanging in downward, it causes you to potentially hit the hurdle and have your foot get caught in the hurdle, which can be devastating in a hurdle race. So you really want your athletes thinking about that. I'm going to go ahead and just show you what some good hurdle form looks like, knowing that, yeah, I did go to UGA, and I'm going to show you Grant Holloway from Florida, but, you know, Grant Holloway is a friend of mine, so it's okay. So as you see, look at his upper body. His head is straight, his shoulders are straight, his hips are always pointed straight. That is really, really key. And for each hurdle, it looks the same. The form is the same throughout. His arm is cycling through just as if he's running. He gets that excellent high knee action before extending his lead leg. I think that's enough. We'll end there with loading for him. Didn't mean to do that. Cool. Going to the next page. Now I want to get into some hurdle form, just common issues. One issue is your athlete is hesitant to run hard because they're afraid of hitting the hurdle. And I think one of those things is letting your athlete know, hey, that's okay. That's not abnormal. But try having your athlete build confidence by running over lowered hurdles or banana hurdles. Have them work up to it speed-wise too, so they can go over at a slower pace and get progressively faster. Building up that confidence is key, and you build it from the ground up. Lower hurdles, slower running, progressively getting faster, but it is key to make sure your athlete is progressing. So if they're starting off with low hurdles, don't let them stay there. As they get better, as they get more confident, have them move up to bigger and faster. Another big one is struggling to maintain proper hurdle form. And as I said earlier, a big key to remedying that is to work close with your athlete during hurdle drills to make sure they're performing each drill with sound mechanics. That is really key. Provide your athlete with one instructional cue at a time to focus on and reinforce those cues throughout practice. Recording your athlete and showing them the video is so important. That helped me tremendously because in my mind, I think I'm doing A, but in reality, I'm doing B. And there were so many things that I thought I was doing correctly. Then once I saw it on tape, I realized, oh, this is not how I thought I looked. I look completely different on tape than in my head, or in person than in my head. So filming your athletes and playing the video back to them and pointing out, what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, need to fix, need to adjust, can really, really help them a lot. Struggling to maintain that proper hurdle form, another key remedy for that is, again, making sure your athletes are properly warmed up. That's a key. Struggling to consistently hit their step pattern. Again, a big thing is making sure you're properly warmed up. Like I said earlier, You want to make sure you're hitting the same step pattern at practice and at competitions every time consistently. You want to make sure that your athletes are well warmed up, doing their hurdle drills before they do a hurdle practice or competition. That's critically important. And one thing I did not mention earlier, but I do want to kind of say, when it comes to hurdling and your step pattern, you want to make sure that your athletes are not adding any more than 2 steps between each hurdle. That means for the 300 hurdles, that means that your athlete is, let's say, I told you earlier that I ran 14 steps to hurdle 8 and then 15 on the last 2. That's fine. You don't want to have an athlete running, 15 steps between hurdle 2 and 4 and then falling back to like 18 steps, right? Adding no more than 2 within a race and no more than 1 between 2 hurdles is definitely key to making sure that your athlete is attacking to and through the hurdles. Now I'm going to go over a few key hurdle drills. Again, these hurdle drills are available in the hurdle training guide. So they include the wall drill, the trail leg drill, the hanging trail leg drill, popovers, 1-step drill, 2-step drill. So I'm going to click, and these are the drills that are in that training guide. Here's the wall drill. This wall drill just gets you in the mindset of attacking the hurdle, being quick. Setting a hurdle up against the wall and attacking it, being quick. I'm not going to go through all of these. Let's go through a handful. Different examples of the wall drill. This trail leg side drill is, again, it's really meant for athletes to do, so it gets them in the mindset of attacking through the hurdle with their trail leg. So you're going to be quick with that trail leg action, intentional with that trail leg action, and keep that trail leg close to the body. This trail leg hanging drill is another great one. Same thing, being quick, being intentional, keeping that trail leg tight, and building that over time. Popovers, this is just running towards the hurdle, popping over, trying to keep form. This is great for getting athletes acclimated to the hurdles. When they're uncomfortable with them, you can lower the height. But even as athletes develop, I'd recommend you still do popovers as a warm-up, just so athletes kind of get used to that hurdle action. I usually had my athletes do popovers slowly and less aggressively for their first or second, and kind of build up with aggression over time. That way their body is able to warm up and they're kind of avoiding, injury, because you don't want them going full speed at hurdles when they're not fully warmed up yet. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, bring this back up. So this is the last slide, and then we'll get into Keturaj. So practicing the hurdles, I would say limit the hurdling to no more than twice per week to avoid overuse injuries. This includes competitions. So you might want to hurdle on a Tuesday and then also on a Saturday at a meet, or a Tuesday and Thursday with no meet on the weekend. For example, your Monday can be a maximum velocity speed day. Your Tuesday, an easy tempo run, maybe some like 100-meter dashes that are kind of run at an easier pace. Wednesday, getting into that speed endurance over the hurdles, might be something like running some 200 hurdles to the finish line, or maybe the start, running 300 hurdles from the start at practice. Use that Thursday to active recovery, maybe do a nice like mile run, nice and easy. And then on Friday, you might want to do some starts over the hurdles. This is an example training week, but again, there are more examples within the hurdle training guide, and I added that into the chat.